Hello everyone and welcome to the second game we'll be covering in this series, covering some of the games that we've never covered by the great magician. Here Mikhail faces Konstantin Alexandrovich Klaman, a master of sport in USSR back then. This was played in 1957. It's the tournament where Tal was 20 years old. Tal won the tournament, first placed some half a point ahead of second place Paul Keres, and he was awarded the Grandmaster title. So he was not even a Grandmaster when playing this game. And Konstantin Klaman, he was also a very, very strong Soviet master of sport. He also served as a partner and as a sort of as a second teacher to Boris Spassky. He was the champion of Leningrad and, well, just a very, very strong player. Interestingly, some 10 years prior to this game, he defeated in the USSR Championship, he defeated Paul Keres, someone that we all know was impervious to Tal's magic. Tal, even throughout his entire lifetime, Tal has a negative score against Paul Keres. So it's some 8 wins Keres, 5 wins Tal, and 17 draws. And Konstantin was able to beat Keres. So he is a very, very dangerous player, very strong player. Let's see how he does against Misha. So, let's check it out. Misha opens with pawn to e4, as he usually does. We have pawn to c5 and knight to f3. We have knight to c6, pawn to d4, captures, and knight to f6. We have knight to c3, d6, and bishop to g5. Tal opts for the Richter-Rauzer variation of the Sicilian, bishop to d7, and queen to d2. And now, black's last two moves, pawn to d6 and bishop to d7, are aimed at clearing up the c file. The rook will be placed on the c file. The queen will come into the game via the a5 square, and of course you are expecting Tal to castle queenside. You want to play a6, b5, and so on, the usual stuff. And definitely here to this queen to d2 move, you should play pawn to a6, and then if Tal castles queenside, you have e6, then b5, then b4, and so on. But queen to d2, and it's something that Tal and Koblenz were sort of discussing and maybe even joking around with it before the tournament, that the move is sort of useless because you play it, and you know that black will play knight captures on d4. So why play queen d2, then knight captures on d4, and then queen captures on d4. Well, that's just the point. Black should not play knight captures on d4. It seems like this is a great opportunity for black to sort of punish white and make white sort of suffer for wasting a tempo, but it's the best you can do. So you should not capture, you should just go with the variation that we've discussed. But in the game, knight captures on d4 was played, queen captures, and now queen to a5. I imagine Konstantin was feeling very good about making Tal burn this tempo for free. And it's a position that can be reached even today. You can see that queen on a5, very nicely placed, comes into the game with tempo. The bishop on g5 is hanging, and there are even modern games with this exact same setup. For example, Ding Liren defeated Bu Xiangji in 2016 with pawn to f4 here. And for example, bishop to d2 is the most played move. I think it was the most played move even back then. But Tal decided to go for bishop captures on f6. He has a very, very different idea, and I have no idea if the position has been reached before. Prior to this game, I couldn't find any in the database, but let's call this a completely new game now, that this position has never been reached before, you know, since this game in 1957. So, okay, g captures on f6, and we have castles queenside by Tal, and rook to c8. Okay. Nothing unexpected here, you know, those are all pretty standard moves. Tal plays pawn to f4 and rook to g8. Okay, so not like in the previous game, black is also getting some development in. The rook is there, the queen is there, the rook occupies the semi-open g file. So, you know, nicely positioned pieces. If you can get maybe the light square bishop to e6 will also be very nice. Tal plays g3, so he can develop the light square bishop and pawn to e6. And here, you could play king to b1. Of course, it's always a useful move, supporting a2, getting off of that c file. One thing you don't want to do is capture on f6. If you capture on f6, then bishop g7, and you will have huge problems here. So that's not even a question. Bishop to h3 is what Tal plays. And okay, the question is how to continue now. Let's say black just continues with a6 b5, because why not? The reason why this isn't as impressive as it often can be is that Tal had this rook h to e1 move prepared. And after pawn to b5, this sacrifice of the knight with knight to d5. And you can't really capture the knight, and you can't really not capture the knight. If you capture the knight and he captures on d5, you're just falling apart here. There's not much for you to do there. If you go to d8, then queen captures on f6, then also bishop captures on d7. We can even show it, but it's a pretty... Yeah, you can just resign here. King captures, queen captures on f7 check, king to d8 and rook to e8 is checkmate, or you block with the bishop and then queen captures on e7 is checkmate. So only one of the ideas. So after knight to d5, you would have to play something like bishop to g7 to stop knight captures on f6 fork. And now a simple, and look at this. This is something you only see when the magician is playing, and that is knight e7. Look at this beautiful fork. Forking the rooks and, just being there in black's camp. Nothing defending it, but still cannot be captured. The interface wants to give it a brilliancy sign, so we can even do that if you guys like that. But if the knight is captured, then queen captures on d6 check, king to e8, you will capture the bishop, king f8, you will capture the rook as well, and once the king goes to e7, then rook d7 will be checkmate. So this is Tal's idea behind bishop to h3. So Konstantin, of course, as a stronger player as he was, figures this out, plays queen to c5. He says, all right, we're not going for the standard stuff, let's trade queens. Tal says, no thank you, I'm just going to bring my queen back, queen to d2, and only now Konstantin plays pawn to b5. And here, one of the reasons why they also called Tal the hypnotist. Tal realized what was happening here. He wanted, Konstantin wanted this as well. He wanted to chase away Tal's knight, play queen to c4, put pressure on the a2 pawn and on the e4 pawn, and when Tal figures out how to defend the a2 pawn by playing king to b1 or, somehow, then he wanted to capture the pawn on e4. But it's a faulty plan. Tal figured it out, and he just allowed it. So Tal played rook h to e1, we have pawn to b4 and knight to e2, and everything's perfectly fine, but you have to play a5 here. However, queen to c4 was played, Konstantin continued with his plan, and Tal played king to b1, sort of blundering a pawn, but yes, you are winning a pawn, but you're also opening up the e-file for Tal's rook. And, again, like in the previous video, they knew how Tal was playing. They knew that, they can't just fall for his tricks. If he offers you something, it could be a trick. You should maybe capture it. So they tried calculating, but it didn't always work out. Here, queen captures on e4 was played. Bishop to e7 was the last attempt at holding this, maybe pawn to a5 as well. But queen captures on e4 was played, and now Tal goes in with the knight. Knight to d4. Also, interesting is pawn to f5. Not interesting. The engine says pawn to f5 is the strongest, but I don't agree with the engine. I actually prefer Tal's idea a lot more, because the engine wants... Look at what the engine wants. The engine wants pawn to e5, and now after knight to f4, okay, the rook attacks the queen. Queen will move to c6, knight to d5, and now after bishop to e7, guarding the f6 pawn, capturing the pawn on b4. And this does not look nearly as appealing as what Tal figured out. So after queen captures on e4, Tal played knight to d4. Well, objectively, okay, if Tal actually played against the engine, chances are the engine would beat him. But when playing against humans, well, they sort of understand what the engine is trying to do, but no one understands what Tal is trying to do. So knight d4, we have queen back to b7. Also, the knight takes away the c6 square from the queen. Queen to b7, and now queen d3. And here comes the hypnotist. Tal just attacks the h7 pawn, sort of, centralizes his queen a little bit more, and asks, what do you do here? And believe it or not, the best move for black is to bring the rook back, rook to h8. But again, as in the previous game that we've discussed, you just don't do this. I mean, you don't fall behind in development and then, undevelop a little bit more. The rook on h7, on h8 is just horrendous, and, that no one will play this. So after queen to d3, Konstantin believed Tal that, okay, obviously that was a bad idea, played bishop to e7. And Tal captured the pawn on h7. Not for the sake of grabbing a pawn, he's attacking the rook, and also, you know, you never know what the future holds, but he might need to advance that h-pawn in the future. So rook to f8, and now Tal plays another move that is just brilliant, plays bishop to g4. And the idea behind bishop to g4 is, and that's an idea that we find in all of Tal's games. You know, when Tal plays, every move that he plays is aimed at the opponent's king, and the bishop to g4 does just that. The idea is to stop the king from running away and hiding on the queen side. So if king to d8, you would play bishop h5, go after the pawn, and now you either allow, you know, bishop captures on f7, then captures on e6, and then all of black's pawns just disappear. Or if bishop to e8, just guarding the pawn, do you see what Tal had in mind? Pretty sure you do, as you guys are really strong, you know, watching this and everything. But rook captures on e6. That was Tal's idea. I mean, if you know it's Tal playing, you know, first move you look at, okay, maybe first move you look at is queen captures on f7, then you realize it's madness, and then you find rook captures on e6. But the idea is that if f captures on e6, knight captures with check, king d7, you capture the rook as well with check, king d8, and now again a nice check, only move king to d7, and now bishop to g4 with all sorts of nasty discoveries that are impossible to dodge. Of course, if you unpin with king to c6, then bishop f3 just picks up the queen. So this is game over. So after bishop to g4, queen to c7 was played. And here Tal plays king to a1. Again, I prefer Tal's solution to the position a lot more than what the engine is providing. The engine says rook d2 or rook to e2 just to add more support to this c2 pawn. And yes, it seems like, okay, you have the knight defending, the queen defending, the king defending. It's actually not enough. You have to either overprotect it or move the king to a1 as Tal did. So Tal's move is not in any of the engine's recommendations because seemingly a5 and black is okay here. And Tal even mentions, or rather Alexander Koblenz in his book after he analyzed it with Tal after the game, that a5 should have been played here. But you know, it's definitely a tough move to play. Plus, unfortunately, we don't know the clock times. Pawn to f5 was played here, giving Tal a deadly dare. Again, something you don't do to Tal, and Tal accepts it. Bishop captures on f5. And this is a decoy sacrifice. You're not really, you know, or thrilled about I mean, you are thrilled because the real sacrifice is coming, but you're not really too excited. E captures on f5. You shouldn't capture the bishop, but if you don't, then you have to admit that you've missed it. So, I mean, that could be even worse. E captures on f5, and now comes the real sacrifice. Rook captures on e7. Beautifully done. King captures, and now rook to e1 with check. And the problem is, and also why Tal played king to a1, which is, you know, just funny, is that if the king was not on a1, if the king was on b1, then once this rook e1 check was played, you could block with bishop to e6. Here it doesn't work, but you can just capture the bishop. But look at the f pawn. The queen is no longer guarding the c2 pawn. You would not have knight captures on e6 due to queen captures on c1 check. Then the king moves, and then you just sacrifice the queen and deliver a checkmate on c1. So that would be the problem. So that's why the king on a1, queen captures on c2 does not come with check, and there's nothing. You can simply capture on e6. And after queen captures on c2, you capture on f8 with a discovery from the rook. And after the king moves, you give another check. King to c7, you give another check. And, well, it doesn't really matter where the king goes. King b8, you can give another check. King b7, and now even a silly move like rook to b1, just preventing the queen sacrifice. And you're up a full knight. You win this however you want. You can just push the h-pawn. Anything goes here. So that's the problem. So after rook to e1, king to d8 was played. Now the idea is move the queen and somehow hide that king over to the queen side. Queen to h4 with check, and now pawn to f6 blocking, and everything up to this point, okay, maybe you realize, okay, Tal is playing, so we have to sacrifice something, but now you have to be engine precise. Your next two moves are crucial if you are to win this game. There's only one solution. Have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. The move in question is queen to h6. sort of a slow, silent move, but no, not really silent. You are threatening to capture the rook, but there's no good way to defend. That is the problem. In the game, queen to a5 was played. The problem is, okay, if you move the rook away from the f file, queen captures on f6, just wins the game. And if you go king to f7, then queen to h8 check. And okay, rook to f8, you will give up that. And after bishop e8, this will be checkmate. So the rook cannot be defended after queen to h6. So here, queen to a5 was played, trying to give up the rook in order to run with the king to c7. But this is not a move of a desperate man. This is actually a very elaborate idea that, if Tal is not careful, will cost him the game. So what was Konstantin's idea here, and how is Tal to win this game? Again, only one solution. Have at it. The only move that wins the game, believe it or not, knight to b3. That is the move. If you were looking at queen captures an f8 with check, I mean, sure, everyone wants to grab a rook with check, but after king to c7, your queen is hanging, and once you move the queen, b3, threatening checkmate and also threatening checkmate. So there is no defense against that. That's the problem. So that's why Tal played knight to b3, attacked the queen, and now there really isn't anything Konstantin can do here. Queen to d5 was played, yes, nicely centralizing the queen, but now queen captures on f8 with check. King to c7 and queen captures on f6. We have rook to e8, offering a rook trade, and now rook to c1. The only move that wins convincingly for Tal. Tal plays it, the rook is very safe there, and not much to worry about here. Now you can either advance the h-pawn or, focus your attention to the black king. Bishop to a4 was played, and now queen to d4. Now Tal says, all right, enough with the fancy stuff. I'm up 2 pawns. Let's go into the endgame. Konstantin, of course, has to decline. A queen to b7, and now rook to d1. Just going after the d6 pawn. And that's the thing. If you capture on b3, you're gonna lose the d6 pawn. And if king c8, then a captures on b3. And you are forever stuck here. I mean, there's really nothing to do here. White will just push the pawn and win the game. After rook d1, rook to e6 was played, guarding the d6 pawn. But amidst all of these threats, you had to blunder something. Here Tal plays queen c4 check, and he was in this position on move 34. That in an already losing position, Konstantin Alexandrovich Klaman resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So very, very nicely done. What could you do? If you go king to d7 to defend the rook, which seems like a good idea, all of a sudden knight c5 check with a quadruple fork, and of course the knight cannot be captured, so this is just that's just disgusting. But yeah, beautiful game, full of magic, forks, and all sorts of cutlery, but that is the way Tal played chess. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you would like to see more, I would definitely like to show you more. Today, or rather, I got the notification on my phone now while I was recording this video. The Grenke Chess Classic and also the Grenke Chess Freestyle just started, so we're probably going to cover games from that tournament as well, but we will be returning to the lessons from the old masters and from the Magician of Riga. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Derek King, Charles Benjamin Flynn, Diane Schwartz, Ilya Maltsev, and Mohammed Babar Khalil for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day, and I will probably use this as a thumbnail. See you soon.